Catalina from bloggingtheboys.com and the Blogging the Boys podcast network. You can hear him on our morning update show, Cowboys Roundup, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So you'll hear his audio stylings tomorrow morning. Tom Ryle is with us as always at Tom Ryle BTB on Twitter. Tony is at Tony_Catalina. Tom writes incredible articles, just gives us all sorts of education on a number of different things. You can hear him on Riled Up every Thursday on the podcast network. And with us today, frankly, is the smartest man alive. It is Aidan Davis from bloggingtheboys.com making his BTB Roundtable debut on Twitter at Aidan1214. We have learned not his birthday, but we have also learned a number of great things about him and from him. Aidan, we start with you. Welcome to the Roundtable. The Dallas Cowboys are 6-1.
Thank you. It's good to have me. Yep. Did not expect us to be 6-1 after last Sunday, but it's full of fun surprises. So
Aidan, you had up until last Sunday correctly, based on historical research, predicted that the Cowboys defense would generate 2 turnovers a game from here on out to the regular season. They did not generate a single one against the Minnesota Vikings in their 20-16 victory. They'll have to make up for it somewhere down the line. But if I had told you the Cowboys would lose the turnover battle 2-0, and that they would have won, I think you would have said that would have had to have been a game that Dak Prescott was flawless in, something like 400 yards and 4 touchdowns to carry the Cowboys to victory. But Dak clearly not capable of doing what Cooper Rush did on Sunday night.
It's not even the turnover margin. You're penalized 96 yards and you're only scored points. I mean, they're really, like, if you just look at it on paper, there wasn't a lot going for us, but the defense showed up. It was an amazing to watch. So
good times. We're going to break it all down. We do have some people in the stream with us. Tony Peters, Tom, joining us from North Carolina, I assume. Maybe NC stands for, I was going to say Nova Scotia. That wouldn't have been correct, though. I don't know how to read. Mike joins in, says, sup, Cowboys fam. Shout out from South Padre Island, Texas. Go Cowboys. Growing up in the Rio Grande Valley, I've told people this my entire life. We just called it the island. You know, like all these other people from all over the place call it South Padre or Padre, but we just call it the island because, you know, it belongs to us. Tom, have you ever heard it referred to as the island? Tom, you're muted.
I'm muted when I meant to. Yeah, just now I heard it coming from your own lips there. I may get a shot to go down there around Christmas time. I'm waiting to find out, but yeah, you know, this is really wild. Aidan actually brought up a couple of the things I dug up in my little look at the stats for the Cowboys, which should be going up tomorrow. You know, the penalties, the turnover margin, and just the field position. Dallas had crappy field position all game long. Their best starting field position was the 32-yard line. And the Vikings had 4 drives that started closer to the Dallas goal line than that during the game. So it wasn't just an outstanding offensive performance. It was an incredible job by the defense, too.
I agree. And what's more, Tom, is the Vikings actually began 3 different possessions with 60 or less yards to go against the Cowboys, only netted 3 total points from all 3 of those possessions combined. You just hate to see it. Tony, let's see here. Tony, not you, Tony Catalina, Tony Peters has confirmed that it is North Carolina. Kenneth says Cowboys from Washington, D.C., enemy lines, behind enemy lines, really living in enemy lines, so to speak. DFW says hello from McKinney. That is up near Aidan's home neck of the woods. Michael says hello from Toronto. So not just America's team, people, North America's team. And Kenneth wants us all to know I am a diehard Dallas fan, as you are, Tony Catalina. Did you anticipate Tony feeling this good, you know, on Tuesday afternoon? Because I got to be honest, Tony, in our Slack channel that we have, you know, on staff, you were kind of Chicken Little more than anybody else about Cooper Rush starting. You were really freaking out.
I was not in a good mental place. I'll tell you that. I was refreshing the Twitter
all weekend long. It was Tony just sending the latest updates. I don't feel good. This doesn't feel great. This is bad. This is. I'm not feeling it. Sunday morning. I bet you didn't enjoy the Red Zone channel at all Sunday, Tony. You were a mess.
No, I remember just like the wind. Like I think I said it in the group chat. Like the wind is out of my sails. Like when he got announced, I was over analyzing his workout. I was refreshing my Twitter feed to see if Dak was gonna play, and I just when him and in Britt Brown and they embraced each other, I was like, that's a positive sign. But little do we know, I was like, hey, you're not playing this week, man. And I overanalyzed it and read that wrong. And I'm glad to be wrong. I am 100% excited and happy to be wrong.
Well, the Dallas Cowboys do sit at 6-1. They proved Tony wrong. They proved a lot of us wrong. They proved most people wrong who didn't believe in Cooper Rush. And that's kind of what they have done all season. They believed in Terrence Steele when none of us did. Aidan, you worked up a graph at the time in terms of options the Cowboys had at right tackle. We were all talking about, should Zach Martin kick out? People were even getting creative saying Connor Williams should kick out. Let Connor McGovern play left guard. I mean, people really doubted the Cowboys, but they were proven right on the Terrence Steele situation. They were proven right, albeit the sample size is microscopic when it comes to Cooper Rush, Tony. So our first question, Aidan, excuse me. I'm all over the place. Aidan, the question is to you first. How long had it been since the Cowboys won a game like this for you where, they proved you wrong because they prove us wrong a lot, but in a really, impressive way, that they were able to kind of just say, hey, trust us, and it worked out.
I think the last time I was more confident in a Cowboys loss and they ended up winning would have been maybe 2018 against the Saints. That was the Thursday night football game when they came in as massive underdogs, upset the Saints. But even then, I kind of left that game feeling like they got away with one, like they'd stolen a victory when they really shouldn't have. So a convincing win. The last time the Cowboys have gotten a convincing win in a game that they shouldn't have, maybe 2014 against the Colts. You're talking about that was the game to clinch the division, and the Cowboys just came in and steamrolled the Colts. That was probably the last time where you leave the game feeling, okay, this team's legit. They're ready to play.
Shout out to Pat McAfee. He had a great fake punt early on in that game that was dropped. Just kind of shows you if that fake punt is converted, maybe that doesn't end up being the blowout that it was for the Cowboys, as you mentioned. And they were coming off a big win that day in 2014. They had just beaten the Eagles on Sunday Night Football. Dez Bryant had a hat trick of touchdowns against Nolan Carroll, who the Cowboys foolishly signed a couple of years later. That's a good way to put it, though. Like, when the last time you were that confident it would be a loss and it wound up being a win. Tom, I don't think you're going to have a better answer, but go ahead and give it a shot.
The New Orleans game was the only thing that even.
Wow, so not even a creative answer, Tom. You can't even come up with one.
I know, because I'm not sure I can find one that has this combination of elements. The starter is out after we all really were working hard to convince ourselves, like Tony, that somehow he was going to be in. The Cowboys just universally being seen as not really having a chance. And, this whole thing that people still out there, finally they're coming around, but there were still those that kind of felt that the Cowboys weren't for real somehow, which I don't understand how they could have gotten this far and still be thinking that. And then the Cowboys come in and just man up against so many obstacles, as Aidan was pointing out. It just so many things went wrong for them in this game. I think we tend to overlook that, how many things were not lining up well for the Cowboys, and yet they just gutted it out. Cooper Rush had, the game of his life, possibly forever, and here they are. And all the kudos to Cooper, and all the kudos to the coaching staff. We've been slamming on Mike McCarthy. This was, I think, an evidence of what Mike McCarthy has changed about this team, because one of the most common comments was 2 years ago, the Cowboys would not have won this game.
Yeah, we'll get to that point in just a moment, Tom. Don't get too ahead of us. You know what I mean? We're still, putting things in the right order. But that's what I love about this question, shout out to me for coming up with it, is the different ways that you guys have approached it. Aidan, your perspective, the last time you were, this confident was going to be a loss that you end up being, disproven. Tom, your example of when was the last time the Cowboys kind of won a game they weren't supposed to win? Along those lines, you could argue New England with all the penalties that happened. Just a couple of weeks ago, that game kind of felt like it was getting away from them. My kind of go-to there, Tom, is early that 2014 season when they fell down 21-0 against the Rams in St. Louis. It felt like, okay, they're getting blown out. Like, this is not going to work out for them. They committed to the run. DeMarco Murray still had a fumble in that game, but they were able to win. Austin Davis not able to get the game-winning drive for St. Louis. Shout out to Morris Claiborne, who had the game-sealing interception in that contest. Tony, I imagine that was maybe your answer, because I tend to kind of steal the answer out of the tip of your tongue. But when was the last time the Cowboys won a game like this to you? I mean, how did you kind of approach this question?
Aidan stole my thunder, and I hate to sound not creative and like I'm not thinking for myself here, but I mean, it was just the first time like that. I mean, you came into this game and you saw me. I was the ultimate pessimist in this game. I said, let's see some positive things. Let's see if Cooper Rush can, I always say, like, let's see if he can master the forward pass, right? And he made me look bad here. Like, and I'm so glad to be wrong on the situation. And I'm usually the eternal optimist, but I just had a sick feeling in my stomach, and I'm always wrong. I'm a black cat. I can't bet to save my life. But the Saints game, 100%. Like, you just felt like, how could they get this done? Is this something they could do? And then they go out and they just get it done. It was just, I mean, for me, I wish I had a more creative answer to you, but Aidan hit the nail on the head.
See, not to hate on both you and Aidan, but the Saints game was in the middle of that win streak, and they had just traded for Amari Cooper, so there was kind of this like TV, like great TV show quality to that game to me. Like, of course, this is the twist that we didn't see coming, but that made sense. Like, it was his sister, you know what I mean? Like, or something like that. Like, it just, that game had those vibes to me. I really thought hard about this, obviously, because I wanted to talk about it. And Tom, you mentioned it, the intricacies, the qualities of this, the backup quarterbackness. And that's obviously what makes this unique, that it was Cooper Rush, that the Cowboys almost purposefully, if you want to put it that way, played without Dak Prescott. And in that sense, I went all the way back to 2008. Tony and Aidan were, I don't know if y'all were even born yet at this point in time, but the Cowboys lost Tony Romo for 3 games to an injured pinky. And when they lost the game that he was hurt in against the Arizona Cardinals, it felt like that season was really falling apart. And they were supposed to go win the Super Bowl that year, coming off the 13-3 season the year before. And they lost their first game, but then they beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home with Brad Johnson at quarterback, 13-9. And, it was Brad Johnson. So, I mean, not the most stout Super Bowl winning quarterback in the history of the NFL, but still, the guy had been there and done that and played some legit football. I mean, to win a game like this in a quarterback's first start ever, Aidan, I tweeted this out, the last 4 quarterbacks who have won games for the Dallas Cowboys all got their first win on the road against teams that Kirk Cousins played quarterback for. Just an incredible line of coincidence at that particular place.
Yes, that's just completely anomalous. That's one of those things where I'd love to throw out a cool stat about that, but I have
it means nothing.
That is just that's just
Aidan,
outstanding.
I want to put this to you, and Tom tried to ruin it for us, obviously. I Bleed Blue 365 says Garrett never won a game like this. And, we don't want to take victory laps or poo-poo Jason Garrett. Great person, did a great job building a culture that is still being built upon, obviously, under Mike McCarthy. But Aidan, true or false, the Dallas Cowboys would not have beaten the Vikings with Jason Garrett as their head coach on Sunday night?
This kind of feels like a game that maybe Jason Garrett would have won in a complete luck of things, but then he would have turned around and with Dak Prescott lost to the Atlanta Falcons 2 weeks later. That's just kind of how it felt.
Such a great point.
Like, there were some wins that Jason Garrett stole a victory, and then, but with Jason Garrett, you got those ups and down games. You got the games where the Cowboys had no business losing, and there they were in the fourth quarter down. So that's the way that I see things. But most likely, no, Jason Garrett probably wouldn't have won that game.
Tom, Aidan's got the winning answer, so you can try if you want, but I agree with that. I mean, maybe Garrett, because Garrett would do that, right? He would pull off these, and we would always the next week say, this team never quits on him. They fight for him. They love him. They believe in him, etc. And then the bottom would have come out. And that's really been the difference. And everybody, by the way, in the chat is saying true. Nobody disagrees with this notion. So maybe you do, Tom. But that Mike McCarthy is, and call it being a Pittsburgh guy, Pennsylvania guy, blue collar guy, gets his hands dirty guy, whatever. Mike McCarthy is not a guy who blinks, because Jason Garrett has lost this game before, actually. In fact, to Mike McCarthy, the Matt Flynn game. We all remember how painful that game was in 2013. And so I'm giving away my position, Tom. I agree with Aidan and agree with everybody. I don't think Jason Garrett wins this game, but how do you see it?
Well, I think I can tell you something that kind of illustrates it. When last night, while I was watching the Manning cast of the KC New York Giants game, and Kansas City got the ball back the Giants got the ball back after Kansas City had gone ahead at the very end, and they showed Jason Garrett, and you could just see in his head how he was thinking, okay, how can I get to the very fringe of field goal range and give us a slim chance to tie this up? No. With Aidan mentioned, with Garrett, the team would be up one week and down the next. This team has been on such an even keel, and it's an up even keel. They just keep going out and playing well and, exceeding expectations, including Vegas. The Cowboys are the only team in the league that is 7-0 against the spread. And I hope it's, costing some people some money there. I think that's just hilarious.
It's a mean thing to hope. Why would you hope that?
Because I hope that the Cowboys faithful are raking it in. Okay. And this was a game that had Garrett loss written all over it in the old days. And Mike McCarthy has a different team taking the field now than we're used to seeing. And I think that's fantastic.
Tony, a lot of people love to kind of Monday morning quarterback Mike McCarthy. Well, look at the way he handled the end of the game against the Los Angeles Chargers. Nobody wants to point out that Brandon Staley didn't call a single timeout in that same run to preserve time to get Justin Herbert the ball. Nobody cares that Bill Belichick wasted a minute and a half at the end of the first half against the Cowboys, or that he, like a coward, punted on 4th and 3 near midfield in overtime of that game. And, again, maybe we're too close to, maybe we're just in the center of the Cowboys' eye, and so we only see the demerits, thrown at Mike McCarthy. But, Mike Zimmer forgot the rules and called 2 timeouts in a row. And by the way, I find it astounding. This isn't to do with Zimmer, but that the official's job is to ignore a head coach breaking the rules. That seems like a fundamental flaw to me. But Mike Zimmer, and I think, Tony, to frame it for you, I don't know that I think Mike McCarthy won this game as much as I think Mike Zimmer lost this game. And I loved this comment from DJ Dog 31, says Zimmer coached the game that Garrett lost 2 years ago when we lost to the Vikings at home. That game was also on Sunday Night Football. And I think that's just the difference, is Mike McCarthy might, throw up on himself, but because everybody's going to throw up on themselves at a certain point in time, but he knows how to clean it up, and he's going to throw up on himself less than other coaches. Mike Zimmer was throwing up all over himself in this particular game.
I mean, big picture, right? The way you look at Mike McCarthy and stuff like that. Yeah. There's coaching mistakes all over the NFL. You can point it out every single game, every single week. There's been some questionable call. I mean, certainly with Mike McCarthy, certainly with John Fossil, just beyond this team in the league itself, there's always some questionable things. So in the heat of the moment, these coaches are going to make decisions. Things are going to happen. So, but I think this game was one, like, beyond like Mike McCarthy as the coach, but kind of what they brought into this team as like the chemistry or the swagger they bring to this team. This game was won with how they've instilled since the offseason, with the acquisitions they brought in, the belief that this team is as good as they think they are, right? They bought into it. This team went into this game, said Cooper Rush is playing, Dak isn't, and they really didn't bat an eyelash. I mean, and look at the way they came out of that halftime, right? Bam, hit Cedric Wilson for a big touchdown. I think that was the moment where they believed that, like, everything we're saying, everything we're preaching, like, this is real. Anthony Brown said it in the soundbite on the sideline. Like, man, if we pull one out of this game, like, we can beat anything. And I think they truly believe that. So do I think this is a game Jason Garrett would lose? I do, because I don't think he ever had the players with that type of belief, with that type of feel that we can overcome anything as long as we give ourselves a shot. We got this.
to be the latest person to make this analogy to life, because that's what everybody does these days, Mike McCarthy is Ted Lasso. That's who he is. And I hate myself that I'm that mainstream person. People, you can go as different things for Halloween. Not everybody has to be dressed up as Ted Lasso. Seriously, there are other options. Tom, I do want to ask you something. DFW AV Geeks is not taking anything away from McCarthy. Just wondering, do you think that Garrett lost that 2013 game against Mike McCarthy? Just to be clear for everyone, I know Tom knows and everybody here knows, but in case you don't, Cowboys held a 26-3 halftime lead with Tony Romo, Des Bryant, Miles Austin, all of your favorite players, and lost to Mike McCarthy's Packers, led by Matt Flynn. And not Matt Flynn coming off the 2011 season finale when he'd gotten paid. At this point, Matt Flynn had already been cut by the Seahawks and bounced around and was just somehow, some way back with the Packers. But Tom, go ahead.
I think you have to argue that he might have, because Garrett's instinct is to go conservative and play not to lose, which, as everyone knows, is how you do wind up losing games in the NFL. So, yeah, I think it's highly likely that he did by not going out, not pressing, not keeping the foot down. Because when you let up against NFL teams and they have enough time, funny things can happen.
Well, and I think that maybe Mike McCarthy would agree with that as a result of the 2014 NFC Championship game, right? Mike McCarthy kind of, puts things on cruise control. A series of unfortunate events happens, to your point, Tom, and the Packers lose. And that was a weird playoff run in general. Aidan, you had worked up a graph that a bunch of people wrote about. We included in a number of different articles at the site about Mike McCarthy, about how aggressive he's been. And that's something, that Tom touched on in terms of, we want to see aggression. That's something you've got to keep your foot on the gas, whatever proverbial cliche you want to assign there. You also worked up something recently, Aidan, and I'm glad you're here because I would have butchered the explanation for this, about how Mike McCarthy has improved the Cowboys team. This Sunday will mark his 24th game with the team. The first 12 games were yikes. But the most recent 11 have been a radical improvement. Can you let us know, the podcast audience, you really want to check it out? We'll tweet it out at Blogging the Boys. But if you're watching, obviously, Aidan, give us the 101 on what we're seeing here.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is every point, every mark on this graph represents the last 3 games average for the Cowboys' EPA per play on offense and defense. And so what you hope to see is the Cowboys being in the top of the graph for all of it. So offensive EPA per play is a high positive number. Defensive EPA per play is a high negative number. Now, as you can see from the graph, once the high point hit for McCarthy, so that would have been after his 12th game with the Cowboys, until now, McCarthy has consistently improved this team. The 3-game averages just keep getting better. The offense is performing well. Actually, the best 3-game stretch that the offense had was the last game that Dak Prescott played. The best 3-game stretch that the defense had is this past week. And so what you're seeing is since that halfway point, McCarthy has consistently improved the team. And now, obviously, the first half, it gets a little rocky. And so I actually did a little deeper dive into this, looking at how coaches perform over their first season, whether it's normal to have this shaky start. Only 29% of NFL head coaches make the playoffs their first year of coaching. 44% is the average winning percentage. That's around 7 games. Now, you take into account the fact that Mike McCarthy was coaching a backup quarterback for most of the season. My argument is, if you want to judge Mike McCarthy based off this season, that's completely fine. But judging Mike McCarthy solely based off what he did last year, most head coaches don't succeed their first year. And even then, it's going to be rocky at points. So from this graph alone, I think we should be very encouraged with how Mike McCarthy is doing, specifically in how he's improving this team consistently.
Tom, you are the wisest among us. No offense to Aidan or to Tony or to myself. What are your takeaways here? We sent this out earlier in the day to prep for this roundtable. Do you have a question for Aidan? Do you have a question for Tony? Do you have a question for me? Like, where are you at, Tom? Because I'm excited to see your kind of feel and vibe on this.
Well, what I keep focusing on is how that graph smooths out on the right-hand side. It's not just that they're having good defensive and offensive EPA performances, it's that they are having such consistently good ones. And that to me is more important. It's one thing when you win some games because you suddenly have a spike with your offense or your defense, but when you're winning games because you're staying on that plateau of consistently good play, that to me is what can carry forward. It's just like how everyone was talking about how the Cowboys couldn't maintain the takeaways because that's just not historically something that is repeatable on a regular basis, that you can't keep up that kind of level. Well, this is showing the things that you can be consistent in are being consistent for the Cowboys, and we're seeing what that means with the 6-1 start now.
Aidan, your response to Tom. I mean, is he wrong? Is he embarrassing us? Is he correct? I mean, like, what is, elaborate on this, please.
No, that is a perfect takeaway from this graph because, during the first season, there were ups and downs. You had the game against the Vikings last year where the Cowboys, it looked for a second like, well, maybe they figured this out, and then they go out and then they get destroyed by the the football team on Thanksgiving.
To interrupt you briefly, Aidan, and I've hated to do this ever since that week. Football is so unimportant in the grand scheme of life, and we all love football. We all do. That's why we're here. That's why we love the Cowboys. That's why we love to share with one another. As we all remember, the Cowboys organization and the Paul family suffered a horrible tragedy last year in the week leading up to Thanksgiving, right after the Cowboys got that win in Minnesota that did, to the point, Aidan, looked like it was maybe going to propel the Cowboys back to some sort of legitimacy. That Vikings game was Andy Dalton's first win and really kind of his first sort of real start. He started against the Cardinals on Monday Night Football, but there was still, I think, a little bit of aftershock from the Dak Prescott injury. He goes to Washington. He gets injured without Zach Martin in the fold, and so he finally gets back in Minnesota. The Cowboys build up some, I know momentum is not a trackable or measurable statistic, but still the vibes are good, and then they get back to the Star in Frisco, and tragedy strikes them. So again, I know you can't measure that, Aidan, but it's certainly, Mike McCarthy said himself, after that Thanksgiving game, that he had no idea how his team was going to play or to respond to that. And so just it's difficult to use that as some sort of variable that took place, Aidan, with regards to that particular point in this measurement here. But it is something that was a factor nonetheless.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And that was a heartbreaking time, I think, for the entire Cowboys community. But Tom, your point still stands where what we're seeing now is just consistent performances. We're not getting horrible defensive games followed by the surprise amazing defensive game. You're just getting good performances across the board, offensively and defensively. And consistency is the mark of a good team. So, yeah, that was a good point, Tom.
Tony, what's your takeaway here?
I mean, looking at this here, for me, it's easy to see that this team has the potential to have like really high peaks, and what they've done is limit the valleys, right? Like the low doesn't have to be so low, like Aidan said. You're finding a way for level to find its water. I mean, this consistent progression going on here, and as far as tangible things that you can antiquate analytically, this is a positive sign for Cowboys fans. This is a positive sign for Mike McCarthy and his staff. And to see, it's one thing to see it, or the one thing to kind of watch the games and kind of go over the numbers and stuff. It's a whole nother thing to see it right in front of your face in a graph analytically, to say like how I feel about this team, how I feel about the staff, and how everything is going on is there's actual math and the science behind it. Like, so I can appreciate the way this goes, and I think it's just a positive thing for this team moving forward.
Aidan, I do want to add one thing to Tony's point before we get this graph off the screen. And again, we'll tweet it out, and it will be in some articles at Blogging the Boys throughout the week for anyone who's curious. And if you want to kind of look at it yourself, Aidan does a fantastic job for us here. But what I've noticed is the floor. The floor has risen, kind of to Tony's point here. I don't know if I would say a team that's, you know, at an EPA offensively and defensively of 0 is like sort of point blank average, but that is the floor for the Cowboys this year. And if their floor is being an average team, that's what makes them a really good team, is that their lowest low is being an average NFL team, which is a very difficult thing to accomplish.
Yeah, and I'm going to be interested to see what happens with this graph once we get through games like, I guess, not the Saints anymore, but the Chiefs, with the Chiefs offense, with the Cardinals offense. I want to see what the floor looks like when we face one of those upper echelon offenses again. But I think there's reason to believe in the consistency of this team.
Well said. Okay, Tom, next question goes to you, since you look the most sprightly among us. You're the only one with the t-shirt hanging behind you. So you really dress for the occasion. We've thrown a lot of bouquets at the Cowboys' feet here, right? We're calling for encores, right? Like everything's great, everything's perfect, and everybody's really happy, which means, by the way, the next Cowboys loss, and that will come, it is going to be Armageddon. I mean, like, everybody remembers when they lost to the Giants for the second time in 2016. It is going to be chaos when the Cowboys ultimately lose another game, Tom. But we're getting some questions in the chat. What should the Cowboys do about Dak this week against the Broncos? We'll talk about Tyron Smith and Trayvon Diggs, etc. But the question, Tom, in kind of a grand overarching perspective here is, has this team earned the benefit of the doubt moving forward, especially winning a game without Dak Prescott at quarterback?
Yeah, I have to think it has. All NFL teams, it seems like, eventually run into that place where they stub their toe. Winning games in the NFL is just hard, if you'll allow me to quote Jason Garrett. But you're up against a team that's doing everything it can to beat you. So it seems that at some point there has to come a game that's a bit of a letdown. It may come at the point where it doesn't really matter for the Cowboys, when the seedings are already so locked in that it doesn't really hurt them. But I still think it's going to come. And yet we have to give them the benefit of a doubt. It's hard to come in now for 17 consecutive games and keep that energy, keep that level, to get through all the various injuries that come along and all the little, distractions that can happen. So, I think they have gotten the benefit of a doubt because they've shown what they can do against some adversity. The Vikings win was full of adversity, and yet they just countered with, an outstanding performance from Cooper Rush, some really great wide receiver play, and a defense that held the Vikings to 1 of 13 on third down conversions, which is one of the most important indicators of defensive success. If you're getting those stops on third downs, you're getting the ball back for your offense. You're stopping the other team from scoring touchdowns, if at all. And that, to me, just was the real standout stat from that game when I was looking at the numbers. That is something we just did not see very much at all, especially early last year. And now they just came up and did a masterful job of shutting down Kirk Cousins and the Vikings when it came to the money down. So
that's well said, Tom. No, that's very well said. You're right. Succeeding on third down is an easy way to win a football game. Shout out to Kirk Cousins, who just, if Mike Zimmer threw all up over himself, I mean, Kirk Cousins wasn't far behind. Tony, as mentioned, you were the one panicking the most coming up to this game. Have the Cowboys, gotten you to a point where you'll chill a little bit next time? You know what I'm saying? Like if they have to move without Tyron Smith on Sunday, or whatever the case may be, if they have to, kick Terrence Steele out to left tackle in lieu of that, if whatever. I mean, are you less inclined to freak out now because of what happened on Sunday specifically?
I mean, every chance that I've had to be pessimistic or worry about, they've found a way to prove me wrong. And I think that's the mark of how different this team is. And, I've had different moments throughout the season where I've said to myself or out loud, this team, a former team wouldn't have done this. A former team wouldn't have been able to, to come over this adversity. And I don't know if there's a benefit of a doubt. I guess that is a good way to say it, because at the end of the day, like they've proven over the last 6 games, through anything that they've been thrown, they've found the way to go through that adversity. So yeah, I think at this point in time, myself included, because like you said, I was ready to jump off a building all week over it and worried sick. And it's a conference game and they don't care about playoff seeding, like, you know what I mean? Like, but they had a bigger plan. It's bigger than me. And I think at this point, at least this year, every move they've made has just seemed to turn to gold so far. And it's just, you can question, it's like, why didn't Lyle Collins get his job back? Or, okay, well, Terrence Steele has been quietly playing well. At every point in time I've had a chance to question them, they've proved me wrong. So keep doing it.
Aidan, do you worry about a bottoming out there, of kind of, magic moves like Tony said, like, if they just decide to pull something off? Because Tony's right. They're batting 1,000 right now, but at a certain point, there will be regression to the mean. I mean, maybe that's too harsh of a way to put it, but like they will be wrong, or their wrongness will be highlighted in a way that it hasn't been. There won't be something to cover it up. I mean, I guess, how do you feel, Aidan?
That's what I was going to touch on. I think when we say the benefit of the doubt, I think what we're talking about is, are you still waiting for the shoe to drop somewhere? And for me, what they proved on Sunday night is those down games, those bad games, losing a game you're not supposed to, that just may not happen with this team. I mean, in 2019, you had the Jets loss. 2018, you had the Titans. Like, the seasons in the past have been filled with games that it seemed like the Cowboys should have won, and we talked about it. It just all fell apart. But with this team, specifically with this defense now, they can carry you if the offense isn't producing to the level we've expected. So I think that I'm not expecting this team to bottom out at any point, lose a horrible game that they never should have lost. Now, it might happen, but I now have complete faith in this team to win the games that they need to win.
It feels like, Tom, I know the answer for you is yes. Aidan, Tony, are you guys big TikTokers?
I don't post them, but I definitely get trapped in the TikTok world for a little bit.
You're a TikTok consumer. Aidan, you're a TikTok consumer?
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a trend, for anyone who's unaware, not that this is you, Tom, where people have posted, I don't know what the trends are called in TikTok. I turned 32 last week, or 2 weeks ago, so fine. I'm okay admitting this, but there's a trend where people post the audio to "It's My Party and I Cry If I Want to." Is that even the name of the song? I don't even know what the name of that song is, but everybody knows what song I'm talking about. And the trend is to like admit something. I don't know if I'm putting it the right way, Tony. Maybe you could back me up here. To say something that you have previously known to go one way in your life, for you to like meet someone normal or whatever, and then be like, dude, you were in a toxic situation. It's not that way. You're safe now. You're in a safe surrounding. Like, everything's good now. With that specific audio, again, I think these are called trends. But my point here, Tony, is I'm just scarred. Like, maybe that's where we're all coming from here, right? Like, we're all just like, it can't happen. It can't be this way. Like, we're gonna get hurt. And the like TikTok side or the other person involved who's like, dude, this is just what normal good teams do. It's okay to believe. And I don't know, Tony, am I way out of left field here?
Not at all. I mean, that's kind of how I felt every single week, whether it's
how I feel every second of my life. Right. Yeah.
Every time it comes up on Sunday, Tuesday comes around, I'm like, oh, I feel good about this game. And then as the week creeps along, I'm like, they got some playmakers, something could happen. I talk myself into thinking the Giants could beat us. You know what I mean? I'm like, whoa, I don't know about this. And then, they come out flat in the first half against Carolina. And I look at my fiance and I'm like, this is the when, Dalton Schultz can't hold the football. This is when we lose because we can't control little things like this. And we lose to teams that we shouldn't lose to. And I think it's like you said, we're just scarred, or physically, emotionally scarred from this team for years. I mean, I'm 30, you just turned 32. So I've seen things, and I told my fiance, she dove all into the Cowboys fandom with me, and I was like, "Are you ready? Are you mentally ready for what comes to be with this team and what it takes to be a fan? Because it can be brutal." And I just feel like I'm always kind of like shy, like, "Oh man, something's gonna happen," and so far this year it just hasn't happened.
Yeah, Tom. I mean, what is there to say? That just we're afraid to love again, Tom? I mean, that's really who we are at this point.
I refer to it as PTSD because that's what the Cowboys suffer from after last year, especially, and to a certain extent through the entire Jason Garrett era, and maybe for years back before that. It's been so long since we've seen any sustained success from this team, from putting together a complete season and postseason, that we keep waiting for the bad news to come. And we keep thinking it's around the corner. And then when you have something like Dak Prescott is going to miss a game, and we know how his being out just really torpedoed everything last season, we're just waiting for that bad news to drop on us. And that's just, it's like we need counseling. And the counseling is Cowboys win after Cowboys win. And that's the only way we're going to work through this.
In that sense, Tom, we're like the bad boy in the movie. You know what I mean? Like we create the problems. You know what I mean? Like when everything's going good, like we're comfortable in the chaos. We have to live in chaos. Aidan, I'll throw the hard question to you since you were killing your first roundtable. Let's see, I've lost it here. Brady asks, what happens to Cedric Wilson when Gallup comes back? Personally, I think Wilson gives us a better all-around offense. Will Gallup be the odd man out during his contract season? Now, for perspective for everybody, this isn't a report. I'm just speculating. The Cowboys did waive Bradley Anae today, and so they did create that roster spot. They also officially placed Jabril Cox on injured reserve. These are moves, obviously, potential. They'll have to, bring another linebacker. Maybe that's Francis Bernard, but the Bradley Anae wave could be Michael Gallup coming back this week. So that could be happening this week against Denver, Aidan. So what do you do? Because everyone's going to be pissed off at you one way or the other here.
Well, I think we know what happens to Cedric Wilson when Gallup comes back. He becomes the quarterback one, right? No.
It's a great answer.
No, but you just have so many, just like what it seems like at every position, you just have so many weapons where I have faith in Kellen Moore to use his talent and let the talent play. Like, Lyle Collins and Connor McGovern both getting reps at fullback last week. It's stuff like that where Kellen Moore is going to find the talent on his roster and he's going to put them on the field and he's going to use them creatively and he's going to give them ways to just make plays. And so when I think Gallup comes back, you're going to see more of that. Maybe you see 4 receiver sets. Maybe you've see him lining up as a running back. I can't imagine what Kellen Moore is going to do when Cedric Wilson comes back, but he's going to keep getting used, and it's going to be fun to watch.
Tony, what do you do? The Cowboys did not, by the way, the trade deadline is officially coming on. They did not trade Michael Gallup, so this is a question that technically will exist for the rest of the year, and then we'll have a big argument after the Cowboys win the Super Bowl about who they should retain to pair with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and then somebody will say, well, they should just cut Amari and keep both Gallup and Cedric Wilson. But Tony, for the remainder of this season, what do you do?
You asked me what I do. Like you said, Michael Gallup is our 2A, 2B, right? So as far as I'm concerned, but look at what they've done.
Disrespect, not even calling him 1B.
Listen, Amari Cooper is a man in a league of his own right now. I think he's just playing unconscious in the way he's, battling through injuries. But to answer the question, the way this team has been working, don't you kind of feel like they're going to keep Cedric in that 3 hole? And you just kind of feel you don't think so? I mean, and I agree.
On, Tom, do you agree or disagree? Just one word answer there.
No.
Okay, so agree or disagree was the option, but you went with no. Interesting. Aidan, if you have to agree or disagree with that they'll keep Cedric Wilson operating as a 3.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
Tony, are you?
It's not that I think that's what's going to happen or what should happen, because it's clear as day to me that Michael Gallup is the more talented player. But at the same time, Cedric Wilson has done everything they've asked him to do. This offense really hasn't missed a beat other than Michael Gallup's ability to open the top of the offense and, go deep. But I thought for sure Collins was getting his job back from Terrence Steele. You know what I mean? I thought for sure that there was different guys that, Jaylen Smith would factor into the linebacker rotation in one way or another, and he's not on the team. So they've continued to surprise me. I to me, it's a great problem to have. Like Aidan said, you go 4 wide, and who do you guard, right? I mean, now you got a guy who is a legitimate 2 for sure. I mean, he's a possible 2 for sure, legit number 3 in this league. And now he's your 4th best wide receiver going against cornerbacks who might play 12 snaps a game. It's just a great problem to have, and other defenses are going to have to try to figure out how to stop it.
You mentioned Jaylen, Tony. Just so everyone's aware, in case you didn't see, Jaylen Smith was released by the Green Bay Packers on Tuesday. We'll see where he ultimately ends up. Tom, before we get to you, Cooper, not Rush, comes in here and says, going to my first game next week, all the way from Morgantown. So enjoy the game, Cooper. Also, shout out to Burmy Star, says, enjoying the show, guys. Can't comment much, getting the kids ready for bed. But thanks from Bermuda. Tom, do you wish you were in Bermuda right now?
Oh, it's kind of chilly today. I wouldn't mind maybe taking a little vacation there. So good on him.
Tom, actually, I'm going to pivot to this question. So sorry, but you did answer you wrongly, technically. But Michael Scarn asks, any chance they bring Smith back for depth? This is a question that was floating around Twitter. I think that's why I wanted to address it. But talking about Jaylen Smith here, the Cowboys are already paying him this season, to be very clear here. Everyone shook their heads. So Tom, you can say it in a nice way if you want.
No, I think it is best that he be allowed to seek his own path forward at this time.
That was really nice. Wow.
That was really nice. After some of the snarky things I saw floating around on Twitter, I wanted to be very gentle about it. No, I don't see any value in that.
Tom, I'll switch gears and ask you now on the subject of Smith. Are we at all troubled by the Tyron Smith and Trayvon Diggs injury situations? Maybe we are looking for that reason to say, yep, I told you something bad was going to happen. Like, is this that, or have they earned the benefit of the doubt? I mean, like, are you worried about one and not the other? I mean, where do you stand here? Or obviously it works out for the Cowboys that the Denver Broncos traded away Von Miller this week, so they won't have to play them. Championship teams catch breaks. That's not like a measurable thing, but it did work out in the Cowboys' favor this week that they won't have to play him.
Yeah. I'm not nearly as troubled as I would have been back before the season started, because if there is an overarching theme, it's that this team has depth and it can overcome things. And I think what we're seeing with Tyron Smith may actually be part of what's going on with La'el Collins, because maybe they knew that they might be having to come up with a different answer at one of the tackle positions. And
Tom's got the tinfoil hat on. I like it.
Now they've got another week to figure out, do they move Terrence Steele to left tackle and plug La'el back in at right, or do they plug La'el in at left tackle to cover for Tyron Smith if they have to? And that might not necessarily be something they have to do at the start of the game, but as we saw in the last game, they may have to make a move in the middle of the game. So I think this week they're going to be sorting that all out, because Ty Nsekhe came in and held down the fort, which I think should get some credit for, but he obviously wasn't that good. And so now they've got a resource back that allows them to look at it. And they've been talking an awful lot about that position flexibility concept on the O-line, having people able to do multiple things. So, yeah, I think I don't know if it was deliberately or just a little bit of inadvertent falling into their lap. They are now more set up for handling that. Trayvon Diggs' word is it looks like he should be fine for this week from the early indications, although, as we all know, we kind of got fooled by some of that last week. But I think they can find a way to handle that, because Anthony Brown had another pretty good game, except for one play where he just fell down, kind of lost his balance and lost his receiver. I think they're going to be okay, and they're going to probably be okay for a while, because, like I said, the backup players are just stepping up. And, now they've got Kelvin Joseph, who is starting to work his way into the roster. So, yeah, I'm just not that It's something to watch. It's something to be a little bit cautious about, but it's not something to get deeply concerned about the way it was happening. It seemed like every week last year when they lost another key piece.
Right. So I think Tom has spoken on the Trayvon Diggs situation. I don't think Aidan, Tony, either of you are too panicked by that. So let's address the Tyron Smith thing, since Tom set it up for controversy because there are already some differing opinions in our comment stream. So Aidan, you have to upset people first. So if Tyron Smith does not play against Denver, who should play at left tackle? Got to name a name.
I'd say Terrence Steele. I'd let Lyle Collins keep his right tackle position, and I'd shift Steele over to left to see what he can do over there, because he showed he can pick up a position over the course of a short period of time. I'd let him keep rolling at left tackle.
Tony.
Initially, I kind of felt the same way Aidan did, but they keep speaking about continuity. They keep talking about they didn't make a move because they don't want to. They don't want to make two moves for one move. So in this, thinking about that, naturally I thought, okay, Terrence Steele going to left tackle. He has some experience to it. He's played the position before, but Lyle Collins is, one man. They can move to left tackle. They can work him at a left tackle. He has skill. He's a hell of an athlete. He can play the position. He did mention that the left side was his more natural position. So to keep Terrence Steele at one spot, to only change one position and then have Ty Nsekhe be the swing tackle, you're really only changing one spot. And, Lyle Collins is arguably your second most talented tackle on the team. And I don't think it's that much of an argument at all.
Tom, one of these gentlemen has said the correct answer. I will tell you all who in a moment. But since you didn't technically vote, Tom, cast your vote.
Well, it was a close race, but after all the mail-in ballots were counted, I have to give the victory to Tony on that. I think the idea of keeping four guys in the same position and then putting one guy in a new spot is the better way to go than making two guys switch.
I'm sorry, Tom and Tony, that you're both wrong. The answer is to move Terrence Steele. Tony, you mentioned keep four guys at their same position. Terrence Steele is the team's swing tackle. That is still his position if he swings on over to the left side. And to kind of piggyback off of Tom's conspiracy theory, I don't know how baked this is. Maybe I'm pulling it out of the oven too early. I mean, you could look at this, and I am not trying to count chickens before they hatch or anything, but obviously the Broncos and Falcons are not too intimidating of teams. You could look at this as a way to transition Lyle Collins to the right side for when the schedule gets tougher, when you get to the playoffs, because that was kind of the concern last week, right? When he became eligible to play after suspension, we all talked about, well, do you really mess with this? Terrence is playing awesome. Lyle's only played one game in the last year and a half. What's it going to look like, et cetera? So this isn't the preseason or anything, Aidan, but I mean, it does give Lyle that opportunity, and it also gives Terrence Steele an opportunity to play at left tackle and to pick up experience there if Tyron Smith gets hurt, in the run against the divisional teams or something like that. I mean, you just never know. I realize, Aidan, that's wagering a lot of house money that we have here, but they have it, and they've shown us that they are good enough to make those bets.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say is whatever they decide to do at left tackle, I think that at this point we just trust them with what they do, because, yeah, myself included, I did not support the move of Terrence Steele playing right tackle when Collins was suspended, and here we are now. I don't know. I would love to see what happens with this, but I think at this point we just guess and hope that the coaching staff has it down.
True chalk answer. Well done.
Yeah,
okay, so Aidan, this is something I want us to take a look at next week, actually, after the Cowboys get to 7-1, which would be over the technical halfway point. Now there are 17 games, so things aren't perfect. It sucks. But actually, no, next week is not the over halfway point. But still, everybody forget what I just said. The point is, Tony, in getting ahead of ourselves, I'm going to ask you all this question, so Tony gets to go first. Who would you ideally want to host in the wild card round if the Cowboys do not have the first round bye? I didn't tell any of you that I was going to ask you this because I wanted to put your feet to the fire as a surprise. So, Tom, you're next. Aidan, you're last. So nobody screw it up. All right, Tony, Cowboys
Oh my
are
God.
playing in the wild card round. Now, here is the current NFC wild card picture, and this is in seeding order. So, the 4 seed will play the Los Angeles Rams. The 3 seed, again, if the playoffs started today, would play the New Orleans Saints, which is what the Cowboys are. And the 2 seed would play the Carolina Panthers. The Minnesota Vikings, San Francisco 49ers, Atlanta Falcons, and Philadelphia Eagles all remain in the hunt. Tony, go.
As I look at this, there's legitimately only one team I don't want to play.
That's why we all agree you don't want to be the 4 seed. We all agree with that.
Right. That's it. I mean, every single other one of those teams I would take happily. I don't want to see the Rams. If New Orleans, they don't have a quarterback right now. It's Trevor Siemian. Is Trevor Siemian going to beat you in the playoffs? I just don't see it happening.
Phillip Rivers? There was a report today that Phillip Rivers would listen. Would that scare you? Would that change your answer?
It wouldn't scare me. I mean, we beat Minnesota with Cooper Rush.
That's why you should want it to be Minnesota, Tony, to be very clear.
Fair enough. But isn't that like, that's something that happened this week. So that's fresh on our mind. But I'm thinking big picture, like New Orleans is Taysom Hill going to beat us playing H-back? So it's one of those things where I would take the Rams out of it. Nobody in the world wants to play them in the first round, right? So New Orleans, I mean, Carolina has kind of been a dumpster fire since we beat them. Minnesota, we beat them with Cooper Rush. Atlanta, Philadelphia. I mean, give me all of them, right? I'll take them all. It doesn't matter. Anybody but the Rams. But if you had to make me pick one, it'd be New Orleans.
That's a lot of hubris, Tom. How do you feel?
I would want to see Carolina again. I just think that's one that the Cowboys haven't figured out. And to me, that's just and the only one that I'd be tempted a little bit to go San Francisco because they're kind of a hot mess too. I don't think Philadelphia is going to make it that far. I think they're going to just fall out of it. So,
but that's to be clear, Tom. That's why we're asking the question. We do a rooting guide every week at bloggingtheboys.com. Things we're all rooting for. So, what are you rooting for? Who in your perfect world of perfect worlds? Who would it be? Even though you don't think that's possible, does that mean that you would actually like to see Philly get it together to be one of these teams so that Dallas could host the wild card round?
Well, the thing that does kind of tip my hand to saying that is that wouldn't it be lovely to beat them 3 times in the year just so we can rub it in harder?
And that would be back-to-back weeks, by the way, Tom, because the Cowboys visit Philadelphia in Week 18, and to kind of play, I don't know what the boss's name was in the Truman Show. I always forget, but the guy who ran the show. If you want to be that guy here, maybe there's a world where the Cowboys, if they lose in Week 18 to the Philadelphia Eagles, punch the Eagles wild card ticket to the point that they host them the following week, which wouldn't be a season sweep then, to your point, Tom, but it would be in terms of games of relevance for Dallas.
Yeah, especially if the Cowboys rolled out their third string quarterback to make sure that both Dak and Cooper were healthy. For
Will Greer
playoffs.
just goes and does what they need him to. Respect. So then, Tom, your answer is Carolina.
Yeah, my serious answer would be Carolina.
Okay, Aidan. So Tony took the Saints. Tom took the Panthers. How do you feel and why?
Well, out of this list, I'd take the Falcons, but I'm kind of on the boat that, the Falcons and the Eagles, I don't see them making the playoffs in really any world. Maybe Jalen Hurts figures it out, but I really don't see them making the playoffs. Now, one thing I will say about playing the Eagles, I do not want to play the Eagles in the first round of the playoffs, not because I don't think we can beat them. It's just playing a division rival for the 3rd time in a year. I don't know. It just kind of has bad juju written on it.
We've been hurt before. Afraid to love again.
Exactly. So out of these teams, it would absolutely be Atlanta. But out of the teams I could conceivably see making the playoffs, I'd go Carolina as well.
So
we've beaten them.
Yeah, Tony, you are correct in that nobody wants to see the Rams, but you were incorrect in your choice of New Orleans. That defense is impressive, and Carolina has nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. And Carolina's head coach, Matt Rule, has exemplified some cowardice so far this season. To Aiden's point of kind of like things I don't want to see, like things that have bad vibes, I don't want to see Sean Payton. I don't want to see that at all. Like that I don't want to introduce that variable, that factor. Matt Rule has lost big games at AT&T Stadium, playoff games at AT&T Stadium. So let's bring those vibes into the equation. That's what I want to see. The answer is the Carolina Panthers. Have we sold you, Tony, or are you going to die on the Saints hill?
I'm easily persuaded. We already beat them. I looked at a team that is in turmoil as far as the quarterback goes and how they're going to manufacture points. I guess the Sean Payton point is accurate. They do have a good defense, but I don't know. Yeah, you got me. You sold me.
By the way, in our stream, the lunatic asked what I was wearing, what team I was supporting. It's Manchester United. How could you not know? The second most famous club in the world outside of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, seriously, let's get it together, people. Aidan, I'll put this to you. And again, we can study this a little bit more in the coming weeks, but what should we root for at this point in time as Cowboys fans, as far as the top wild card is concerned? If we're assuming that the Cowboys are the 3 seed or better, would you rather see the Los Angeles Rams win the NFC West or the Arizona Cardinals win the NFC West?
Here's my thing. I don't think it really matters because the way that I see playoffs playing out, I think that the division winners are incredibly strong this year, and the other 2 NFC wildcard teams aren't incredibly strong. And so what I think is going to happen in playoffs is the 3 division winners that play in the first round, they're all going to win. And that means that the winner of the NFC West is then going to have to play the lower seeded team, which would then be at this point, the Bucks. Today it would be the Bucks. Yeah. So sorry. I think the NFC West, the second place NFC West team, is going to advance through the first round of the playoffs. I think that the other 2 remaining division winners would beat the 6 and 7 seed. So you think we get an NFC West matchup in the division or the divisional round, excuse me. Exactly. And so that's why, I think that's the most likely scenario. If I were to just chart out playoffs right now, maybe the 4 seed gets it done against the Rams or the Cardinals, but I don't think it really matters all that much, but I would much rather see the Cardinals win the division this year. Okay, you've inspired a different question, but in order for me to get there, I need Tom and Tony to just simply yes or no agree. Do you agree with Aidan, guys, that the NFC West loser will win in the wild card round against the 4 seed, which is definitely not going to be the Cowboys, we're all saying? Can I get some head nods from Tom and Tony or yeses?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so we all agree with that. So then we all believe then that the second round, the divisional round, will be that NFC West matchup, and the Cowboys will play the other division winner, which would either be the Green Bay Packers or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That game, depending on how things shake out, obviously could be on the road, could be at AT&T Stadium, just never know. But that being said, Aidan, I come back to you. Who would you rather then win the NFC West in the sense, I know you already said the Arizona Cardinals, because we would want whoever wins the NFC West to lose that game, so that the Cowboys could host the NFC Championship game. So is that why you're saying the Cardinals? Because you think the Rams would beat them in that round?
That's exactly why. I see the Rams as being a better team than the Cardinals. I think they have a better defense and a more efficient offense. Maybe not a better offense, but it's definitely highly efficient. So I'd see the Rams beating the Cardinals, and that's why I'm rooting for the Cardinals to win the division.
Okay. Tom, then I'll kick it to you in this way. Would you rather host the Rams in the NFC Championship game or visit the Arizona Cardinals in the NFC Championship game?
In that case, I think I'd almost rather visit the Arizona Cardinals because I think they're a little bit more hollow than the Rams are right now. Especially after the Rams once again pushed all the chips into the middle of the table with Von Miller. I would rather face the Cardinals in the playoffs in any fashion, I think, than the Rams. I'm not saying the Cowboys wouldn't have a chance against the Rams because right now I think they have a chance against anybody in the league in the playoffs. But I think the Cardinals would be an easier game for them just because I think the Cardinals are not quite as strong.
Tony, obviously the Cowboys-Cardinals game could play a factor there. And if we're talking about the NFC Championship game, that game would have been about a month before, a month and a half, that Week 17 game. How do you feel? Would you, Do you see it shaking out this way? You know, we're about halfway through this season. Would you rather visit the Cardinals or host the Rams? I mean, again, if you visit the Rams, you have the opportunity to match the Buccaneers of last year and win the NFC. Oh no, you could beat the Buccaneers. You could win the NFC Championship game and the Super Bowl in the same building, which the Buccaneers did not do last year.
I think Aidan kind of hit it on the head here. I mean, Aidan and Tom, really. I mean, I'd rather go to Arizona and face them. I think the Rams are a more complete team. I think what Aidan said about Arizona being like a more explosive offense, I think the Rams offense is just steady, right? They can bleed you to death, and their defense is obviously legit, and they just got better with, the adding of Von Miller. So I think the Rams, we've all kind of had our eye on the Rams this whole year and kind of how it shakes out. So you're telling me if I'm going to have a home game against the Rams, I'd rather take my chances in Arizona against that team. And because we kind of saw what, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers, but they went in there with a whole host of issues and was able to come out with a win. And I mentioned this last week on the Roundtable. I wanted to see that. I wanted to see an Arizona team kind of get stung a little bit in an opportunity. It's like, this is a big game. We should win this game. Everything is falling in our favor, and they still lost. So I wonder how they're going to bounce back from that. And I just think the Rams are just a more complete team.
Aidan, what's the better story? Like if you can be guaranteed a Cowboys win, what's the more satisfying win? Because we're all saying we'd rather see the Cowboys play the Cardinals, but isn't the Rams, especially beating Matthew Stafford, the Highland Park guy, Sean McVay, like that would be a little bit more juicy, I think.
I think so, just because the Rams have sold in for this year. After the trade for Von Miller, even their social media account, whoever runs it, tweeted, like, we're in for this year. This is it. And so being able to, beat Sean McVay, a coach that everybody's praises as being the best coach in the NFL, and then, B, beating a Dallas guy, I don't know. It would just be very satisfying knowing that they're probably not going to be, at least they're not going to, this is their best season in a while to win. And if the Cowboys can get it done against them, you walk into the Super Bowl with a good amount of confidence.
Tom, I've mentioned before the story arc that would be at play if the Cowboys were to go to Green Bay in the divisional round, beat Aaron Rodgers, Mike McCarthy returns. I mean, it would be incredible. I mean, the DVD would sell it. I don't know if DVDs are a thing anymore. I mean, maybe it's like the straight to streaming option, whatever. We all have to have a billion different streaming platforms now. But Tom, a big reason that the NFL is back, and therefore that the Super Bowl and what would subsequently be the NFC Championship game is in Los Angeles is because of Jerry Jones. I mean, like, it would be kind of incredible poetry if the Cowboys broke their drought in Los Angeles in terms of winning the NFC Championship game, winning the Super Bowl. I mean, again, we're really, picking and choosing the things we want here and dressing it up the way we want. But tell me that doesn't, make your heart flutter a little bit, Tom.
I'm more interested in A, not playing in Green Bay, and B, in getting at least the number 2 seed, because don't forget, all these other contenders in the seeding have some tough games still ahead of them. Arguably, they all have tougher games facing them than the Cowboys do at this point. As you pointed out, the next 5 games, every team has had something happen in the past few days that makes it a little bit harder for them going forward. The Broncos traded off Von Miller. The Raiders had the tragedy with Ruggs. And, you've just got all these things that are giving the Cowboys an easier way to keep the wins piling up, while the other teams, they should all have a couple of losses coming down the pike at this point. So to me, that's my thing. I want to find what's the path to get the Cowboys at least to the number 2 seed and hopefully to the number 1 seed.
Tom, spoken like a true optimist. Tony, opposite of your total life disposition. Kevin's comment really opposing your thoughts and beliefs. Tony, doesn't matter. We're not going anywhere to play a playoff game. We are going to have home field advantage. You think? I mean, how just throw a percent out, Tony. You think that the Cowboys are the 1 seed?
When we started this, I'm the one who got smoked because I said we were going to go 13-4. When we made our season predictions over at bloggingtheboys.com, I said 13-4, and I was the highest of all the staff. So Mr. Pessimist was high on them. I'm still high on them. I just worry day to day But I think based on my, what our early thought was 13-4, I think there is a chance. I mean, we're going to have things have to bounce our way, and they're going to have to stay consistent. And like you said, as much as we don't want to worry for that next loss, the next loss is going to come, and we got to figure out a way to, to weather that storm and to bounce back. But yes, there is a chance. And, I'm done questioning this team at this point.
Well said. Aidan, it was your first roundtable. It was magnificent. Is there any other thought that if you don't get off your chest right now, you will not be able to sleep tonight? You kind of have to have one now. That's kind of the point.
Okay. No, I don't think I have anything.
Okay.
I'm going to let everybody down. Yep. Life is great.
Respect. Okay. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Tony is on Twitter at Tony_Catalina. Aidan is on Twitter at Aidan1214. Tom is on Twitter at TomRyleBTB. You can read all of their fantastic work at bloggingtheboys.com. I get emotional talking about the site. Has nothing to do with swallowing wrong right there. And we'll definitely have that graphic available for you on social media shortly as well. So check out Blogging the Boys on Twitter. Tom, the final words, they can be as many as you want. I know you hate the 1-word limit. You get one sentence, Tom, to send us off into the evening. What's it going to be? It's got to be the best sentence any human has ever said. Go ahead.
What is TikTok?
We'll see you next week, everybody.